Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. You're watching Newsroom. I'm your host, Khalid Butt, and we are going to discuss three important topics today as well on this Friday. The first, of course, is the decision by the European Union diplomats to not go to the guided tour of Indian-occupied Kashmir. As you know, this is the second time that the Indian government has invited diplomats to come and visit the Indian-occupied Kashmir on a so-called guided tour, to kind of remove any perception as per what they are saying, what retains and what regards to the situation in Indian-occupied Kashmir. They want to project a certain image, of course, which is far from the truth, and that is why the European Union diplomats have refused to go to this guided tour, and they say they will go whenever they feel free to go and when they feel that they can talk freely to the people of Indian-occupied Kashmir. There are a certain number of diplomats that are going to this two-day guided tour of Indian-occupied Kashmir. That includes Bangladesh, Vietnam, Norway, the Maldives, South Korea, Morocco and Nigeria. Let's see how this pans out. As you well remember, last year also there were about right-wing diplomats from different European countries that had also gone to the Indian-occupied Kashmir region. Now our second topic is the decision on which a lot hinges as far as Pakistan's economic situation is concerned. I'm talking of the Financial Action Task Force and its decision next month whether Pakistan has done enough to still remain in the grey list, to be moved to the black list, or to be completely removed from the grey list altogether. As you know, that there have been a lot of measures that have been taken by the Pakistan government, and what is also being said is that a lot of countries are going to back Pakistan on its removal from the grey list of the FATF. And our last topic, of course, is a very important bill that has now been passed by Pakistan's National Assembly. It is the Zainab Response and Recovery Act 2019. This pertains to the abduction, to the rape, to the kidnapping and the abuse of children. As you very well know what happened to Zainab in 2018, a young girl from Kasur who was abducted, raped and then murdered. This bill is very important as far as the rights of the child in Pakistan is concerned, and not only will assure parents, will not only assure children around the country that they have certain rights, but will also protect them against any abuse in the future. Now, to talk about all of these topics, we have with us one guest with us. He's a very important guest. He's been with us on many other shows, and here he joins us for the entirety of today's newsroom. His name is Javed Rana, and Javed Rana Saab is an analyst. But before we begin our three topics for today, let's go to a small package as far as the invitation of the European Union delegation to visit Indian-occupied Kashmir and the rejection to visit it is concerned, and then we'll come back to it.
In an effort to blunt international criticism of its moves in Kashmir, Indian government invited foreign diplomats to visit occupied Kashmir, first time since stripping the region of special status in August. But some European nations declined to go after being refused permission to travel independently. The security lockdown and communications blackout, still only partially lifted, has drawn international criticism, including in Brussels and Washington. At the same time, India's Supreme Court orders Narendra Modi government to review all restrictions, including suspensions of internet service in occupied Kashmir, within a week, saying the indefinite suspensions of people's rights had amounted to an abuse of power. Whereas in its efforts for Kashmir cause, Pakistan has asked the United Nations Security Council and UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres to act decisively to prevent a disaster war between Pakistan and India. Pakistan's ambassador to UN, while addressing the UN Security Council, said Pakistan requests to the grave human rights violation in occupied Jammu and Kashmir and to enable the Kashmir people to exercise their right of self-determination. The lockdown in the occupied region has crossed 150 days, with the security and communication clampdown now in its fifth month.
You were just watching this package on this so-called guided tour of Indian occupied Kashmir in the whole scenario of the situation that exists since now 158 days in the region. This continuous spate of violence, aggression, and the lack of basic necessities to the people of the region. Now, we've been also joined by a guest, a foreign affairs expert on Skype. His name is Dr. Waqas Ali Kauser. Dr. Waqas, thank you very much to have joined us as well. And
thank you.
Studios, we have Javed Rana, who is an analyst. Javed Rana Saab, thank you very much to have joined us here on this very important day, because we are going to discuss topics that are important to Pakistan and to the region. Let's begin with this rejection by the European Union diplomats to visit a so-called guided tour of Indian occupied Kashmir. Why is India, in your point of view, continuing this spate of guided tours for the Indian occupied Kashmir? Is it trying to change the perception? Will it be able to change the perception?
I think India has a good experience in developing a negative perception against Pakistan. You may recall that we have been blamed and labeled as a country which is promoting these militancy. And from that episode, they have learned another lesson that probably they can repeat the similar episode of what they have done in Kashmir now. After the forcible annexure of Kashmir in August, until now, we know that the Kashmir by and large has been under curfew. They have deployed more than 900,000 military and paramilitary troops over there. And they have made it sure that there is no communication that takes place within the society. And that means the internet services by and large still remain suspended. They partially restored it, and then they said that the texts are not allowed. And then the internet service was restored in parts of held Kashmir, but again the service was limited. So they've been playing different tricks. They think that they can exhaust out Kashmiri people over the period of time.
Right, playing different tricks. Dr. Kauser, do you feel these tricks will kind of have any positive impact on the world community, on the diplomats, that they are trying to maneuver to change their point of view as far as the situation in Indian occupied Kashmir and the violence and aggression that they are continuing on the hapless people there?
So I don't think so this will happen, because in past they have also tried to let 26 European far-right wing politicians, and they have tried this exercise in past many times. It didn't give them any hope. See, we need to understand two things. One is that Kashmir in particularly, when you try to bring the international audience and diplomats over there, what do you want to give the message to the people? That is a normalcy. So in this condition, I guess bringing 16 envoys, trying to tell the world that, look, there is sort of normalcy, people are having the normal business, which is not there. I guess it has backfired in past, it will backfire. You will see one very interesting happening. Mehbooba Mufti has expelled 6 to 8 people, those who have met this delegation from their party. So what is the message? Even the pro-Indian leaders, those who are house arrested, they are actually are not supporting it. Second, you must have seen another thing, that there's a problem of credibility. When you have these sort of guided tours with you, and you try to let them go to the hotels, and then you sort of confine them to the certain places, they have good tea and lunch, and then they come back, it won't change the perception. I guess this is a trick, because they have done it for the two reasons. One is that you must have seen that there was a congressional hearing, and there is going to be a congressional hearing again. So there's a huge diplomatic pressure on Indian, particularly BJP government, to change the situation, to change the perception. That won't work. Second, you must have seen the Supreme Court's decision about internet blockade. I mean, it's not possible that you claim yourself a democracy and you have locked down people and the internet for more than 150 days, and then you are letting people from the outside, diplomats and envoys, to tell them that, look, there is normalcy. I mean, why don't you allow people from India to travel to the Srinagar and the other areas? That is, then you are never letting political parties of opposition from India to come to visit Valley and occupied area. That you are not doing that. Even for that matter, we see the concerned citizen group who has visited the Valley. Yashwant Sinha, their own political leader, he was confined to that hotel. So the question is, so the conclusion is, it won't say anything. It's just a tactic. It will further alienate Kashmiris. It will further, I guess, create more resistance, because Kashmiris have no more expectations from such delegations which are guided. If you want to bring them in, let them go their own. They have to experience, they have to see the society, and then let them decide and perceive what they want to see the real situation.
All right, all right. Please stay online with us. Now, Javed Rana Saab, we've heard what Dr. Kausar had to say. He talks about two things, that the diplomatic pressure is a lot on India, and that is how they are trying to diffuse it by inviting these diplomats. In the past, the 30 MPs from the different right-wing European countries also visited Indian-occupied Kashmir. But that did not really relieve that pressure from India. And also, now that the decision has also come from the Indian Supreme Court concerning all the restoration of the internet and the telephonic communications that have been restricted since now around 158 days in Indian occupied Kashmir. How do you view that? A, do you feel that the Indian government is going to apply the decision of the Indian Supreme Court? And B, do you feel that it pays any heed to the diplomatic pressure that is being put onto it by different countries?
I think we have to see in a broader picture, and the broader picture is that the Kashmir, what is happening inside Kashmir is not an isolated part of the policy of the Indian government. It is a link of what is happening in the northeast of India with two controversial, highly controversial legislation. One which deprives Muslims from their inherent right of citizenship. In the northeast of India, and I'm talking about Assam, and then the West Bengal. And then we had a Citizenship Act where they are actually going to go to provide citizenship to the minorities from the neighboring countries. So basically, Congress ruled India in a manner where they had institutionalized hypocrisy. They were actually blocking the real face.
I like this term, institutionalization of democracy.
An institutionalization of hypocrisy.
Of hypocrisy.
They were camouflaging, concealing the real face of India, which we are now seeing. If we want to know what BJP government wants to do, we must hear their leaders, what the RSS leaders are saying. BJP is a political wing of a terrorist RS.
And everybody knows that.
We know it. But we have to understand, basically we are seeing the baby steps. Baby steps are the internet service would be restored, and then the Kashmiri would come on the roads, and then this issue is going to be highlighted. We are looking at another baby steps, that there would be enough diplomatic pressure on India, after which it will remove these restrictions, and there will be large-scale protest, and the Kashmir issue would be highlighted. I think we are living in a kind of a world which probably does not exist as we think it should exist. Indians this government is not going to listen to the diplomatic pressure to a point where they can come to a negotiating table with Pakistan to resolve this issue.
But what about the internal turmoil? Dr. Kausar, what about the internal turmoil that is going on in Assam, in the other areas of India? Of course, after the Citizenship Act that has been passed by India in December last year as well, then the protests that still continue in different parts of India. How is India and the Indian government going to handle this internal pressure?
The honorable panelist, that when you refer to the northeast and then you mention about the internal destabilization of India, that is very much obvious due to this Citizen Amendment Act. Before that, they wanted to do that NPR thing, and now it's an extension of that. See, there's a right-wing government came with a very particular mandate of a sort of selling fear and hate actually about the minorities and particularly Pakistan. And that we have seen in past as well, that this won't work. Right now, this internal destabilization within India is not, I guess, paying good for India, its own civil society people. It's creating a lot of communal rift, which will take a lot of time to heal.
But doesn't the government in India, sir, with due respect, doesn't the government in India want exactly that, communal rift? Isn't it part of its Hindutva policy to kind of propagate the Hindu nationalism?
Yeah, it is very much their part. The question is, when you see the larger countries, because when they claim that we are the secular, they were secular maybe, but that's a fundamentally very big challenge for other parties in a society where you have large Muslim minority, and then you pass a bill like CAA, just excluding Muslims, that's a very, very pathetic, I guess. We stand with the Indian Muslim with one particular aspect, that is a matter of their Muslim minorities, Christians, Dalits, that this is a matter of their fundamental human rights. People should not be excluded based on their religion. But I want to add one thing. When it comes to Kashmir, maybe we might not be able to draw this binary. This is the Assam, the other areas, they are dealing with them. They have the elections and whatever they have their governance structures. They want to deal with the Indian government, but Kashmir is a fundamental different issue. When we try to draw this binary, this is also confusing. This is what we have seen the BJP doing within India, that, see, these issues, Kashmir is an extension of this issue. No, Kashmir is an international dispute. It involves various parties. It's a matter of the identity and political rights of the Kashmiri people, which was promised by the international organizations like United Nations. So what is the fundamental thing that we based on? Maybe tomorrow India has a worse situation, or maybe India might try to, sort of bring in the peace within their on region. But when it comes to Kashmir, Kashmir is a fundamentally political question. So political question has to be negotiated with the actual stakeholders, the people of Jammu and Kashmir. And what we have seen is BJP for the first time has retracted from CAA by calling it that it was actually a Congress bill. So it was the Congress thing, so we are trying to implement it. I guess BJP government won't be able to sustain. I mean, you are creating the centers, detention centers for whom? I mean, you have done this CAA in Assam, and you have excluded 5.5 million Hindus. Leave the Muslims aside. I mean, what is the message? This is a very flawed technique of selling the fear, hatred to your own constituency.
All right. Dr. Kausar, please stay with us. Selling fear, this is one of the basic kind of fundamentals of the BJP government, of this Hindutva policy, to do whatever it wants, and if anyone says anything against it, to crush them one way or the other. They have been doing it in Indian occupied Kashmir. They have been doing it in other parts of India. Now it is extending and going above and beyond. Where is it going to end?
Just last point I want to make, which your other guests were telling. From our perspective, Pakistan's perspective, from Kashmir's perspective, Kashmir is a different issue to what is happening in the northeast of India.
Kashmir is an international issue. This is what Dr. Kausar says, of course. Issue.
But from BJP's point of view,
it's not an international issue.
It is the same issue because Kashmir has the largest Muslim population. And then there are other Muslims, 200 million Muslims in India. That is a problematic for them.
But Javed, there's one thing that is very interesting. When Narendra Modi sits down with US President Donald Trump, he says it's a bilateral issue and that both Pakistan and India should talk together. Then he says it's a unilateral issue. Then, I mean, he backtracks, he goes beyond, above and on the left and on the right. There's no really a definitive decision as far as the Kashmir issue and how to go forward with it.
Why wouldn't Indians diffuse the pressure? These are their tactics. We have to see the bigger picture. Bigger picture, the point that you are making. They are selling the fear to the Muslims. Look what we have done with Kashmir. We are going to replicate the same thing in other parts of India. There are the two pieces of legislation which are highly controversial. One is designed to actually deprive Muslims of their citizenship. Those Muslims who
had been living in India
are part and parcel of their security establishment.
Exactly.
They have come to conclusion that they are not Indians. So basically, it is because of the legal structure which is in place, that is the biggest hurdle for the BJP government. They, at the end of the day, they will go, if they get majority, maybe in the next election, or if they get an opportunity during this period of time, they will certainly go for Hindutva's original agenda, which is to make India a sort of a religious state.
Where the majority will be Hindus and the rest will be sidelined in one way or the other.
The option, they've been saying it time and again, that is that anyone who is a Muslim, he should leave India.
All right, Dr. Kausar, which brings me to a very interesting thing now. Security advisor Shiv Shankar Menon says that India is facing isolation at the international front due to certain controversial decisions. People from the Indian government, former parts of the Indian governments, are also talking about, we've got Mehbooba Mufti, Umar Abdullah, Farooq Abdullah also talking about what is happening in Kashmir. They have been detained, and that is why the European diplomats are not going to the guided tour of Indian occupied Kashmir. How do you view all of that? Do you feel that India is going to change politically, or do you feel it's going to go in the same vein?
See, the challenge has been enormous. We have seen in past, in particularly this year, that when you see in 2018 and 17, United Nations Human Rights Commission published a report with very, very serious and alarming cases, reporting about the way the people have been killed and abducted, and sort of recommended for the inquiry as well. This was alarming for the India, of course. We have seen that international organizations are trying to, and now pushing India particularly, and trying to raise the voices. We have seen the international media. So this entire cloud is building around this BJP-led government. The idea is that if you want to claim become the member of G10 or G8 or Grade 5 P5 countries, and then your own secular democratic ethos are such that compromise, that you have literally locked down the community and just want to deprive them because they are asking for their fundamental political rights, it won't go together. So within the BJP-led government in India, I guess you have seen the recession, the economic recession as well. Of course, when you have the political instability, it will impact the economic factors as well. So I personally see that this is a grave challenge for the Indian society. The Indian center voices, those who are resisting, and I guess they have to take the leading role. Otherwise, the mandate, and I guess it will further complicate it. We are seeing that people are lynched, and we've seen the universities like JNU targeted.
Exactly,
just on the
we've seen
basis
what
of
has been
diet,
happening
which is
there as
very
well.
sad for India.
Jawaharlal Nehru University, other universities, how the goons enter there and how they harass and are violent and aggressive towards the students there.
One of their artists went there to show the solidarity, or people chanting the slogan of FAS. It is basically a value that they want to tell them. It is basically fundamental freedom thing, or the against the suppression, and the way they are labeled. It shows when you have the government with the fascist right tendencies, it is insecure government. Once you have the insecure people, it is very dangerous for a country which called itself a secular but diverse as well. It is very difficult to control. Things can go any way, anytime.
Exactly.
So I guess if Pakistan's largest neighbor, the larger neighbor, gets destabilized, the impact would be on us as well. So I guess we need to inform the international audience. In particularly, I will refer to the Kashmir that this issue is not today's 10 years issue. This is a long pending issue. So Pakistan has behaved in past, and now that they stand with the Kashmiri people, try to convince and tell the international world that it has a
All right.
grave
Javed Rana Saab, role of Pakistan. Do you feel Pakistan has been doing enough as far as the Kashmir issue is concerned? Amount of resolutions that are in the United Nations, we know that since so many decades, but nothing really is coming out as far as tangible action is concerned. OIC knows about it. All the other stakeholders, international stakeholders know about it. But is there any tangible action that is coming out of it? Are we as a Pakistani state, as a Pakistani nation, as a Pakistani government doing enough?
I think we have made good speeches on Kashmir, and there was a diplomatic effort. We have taken it up at various forums, particularly to begin with the UN Security Council. It was informally taken up. Chinese have their own interest to, actually they want to keep this issue to be alive. But I think we have not been able to do much. Kashmiris are frankly disappointed with our policy.
All right.
And
why so? Because, I see a lot of statements coming out from the Pakistani side. I see a lot of effort being made by our Prime Minister, by our Foreign Minister. He goes to every other country and talks about it. Our Prime Minister, the speech that he made at the United Nations General Assembly was impressive, to say the least. I mean, what more can we do?
That is what I am saying, that we have made good speeches on Kashmir. I think...
what more can we do?
I think there is trouble is that we are, over-conscious of the fact that the subject that we are going to discuss about the financial task action force. We have huge fear that something big is going to happen. Under UN General Assembly's resolutions, the Kashmiris have their legitimate right to pick up the arms. They have a legitimate struggle. There are UN Security Council resolutions, at least 11 UN Security resolutions. If Kashmiris resort to violence because their women are being raped, their children are being picked up, they are being brutalized,
put into jail in different other parts of India,
I think we should support that legitimate struggle. We are over-conscious. And now because of a 9/11 situation, we think that once the curfew is lifted, there is going to be large scale protest, and then it will be difficult for India to control. I think if there are some militant groups inside Kashmir which have no linkages with Pakistan,
that India continues to
if
point
they
out
are
towards
if they are
Pakistanis.
resorting to violence against Indian security forces, that is their legitimate right under UN General Assembly's resolution in mid-70s.
All right. Dr. Kausar, are we being extra cautious as far as our efforts towards Indian occupied Kashmir is concerned?
See, we for the first time seeing that across the board in Pakistan, particularly civil society people, those are from universities, academia, civil society, has responded so strongly against this August 5th action. So one, on the collective society side, I guess society has responded. People has shown anger, solidarity, and tried to contribute. But I guess government needs to do something more. One of the things that's lacking is the sort of more robust political consensus within the country, and then I guess our political parties divide of which side of the assembly they are opposition, they are from the government. They have to collectively create base a mass to push and talk, and it's not the PTI government who should be responsible for this. It's a matter of the entire political parties. Pakistan is standing with Kashmiris due to fundamental their political rights, which is self-determination. I guess political parties should have been more active to lobby internationally and international world. And second is a challenge. We also understand that Pakistan's domestic condition, particularly, is trying to improve, but it needs more effort to have a more better sound economy and I guess better governance as well, which of course reflects internationally, and we have seen that. And third, Pakistan has shown a great gesture of Kartarpur towards India. I guess this is though as a Kashmiri, I must say that this should have been well thought out. I mean, the situation was something different over there, but it's a peace gesture. So I guess world must push India as well and tell them that there is no way forward until you talk to the people of Jammu and Kashmir, you talk to the people of Pakistan, the Kashmiris, the actual stakeholders, and you have the mechanism available to talk, which are the international UN mechanisms, or other if you create any mechanism, but disengagement is no solution. And rest assured one thing, we have been saying about human rights a lot, and I guess there have been unprecedented human rights issues in Kashmir. And also we need to understand that this human rights issue has a base, and it's a political base. But along the human rights thing, it's a political thing that we need to chart, we need to speak and disseminate to the world as well.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Waqas Ali Kausar, to have given us your very interesting point of view as far as the situation in Indian occupied Kashmir in India is concerned, the so-called largest democracy of the world, which we feel is no longer the largest democracy in the world. But the world needs to really pay heed to whatever Pakistan has been also saying time and again since the last many years. But as Dr. Kausar says, there has to be more robust political consensus on this issue as well. We'll be back with our second topic, that is the FATF decision that is going to be taken next month, and how important is it for Pakistan after this short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. You're watching Newsroom. I'm Umar Khalid Bhatt, and we're going to talk about the decision that is going to be taken next month by the Financial Action Task Force, which will decide whether Pakistan has done enough to be removed from the grey list. Javed Rana Saab, you were talking before the break about Pakistan being cautious as far as the Indian occupied Kashmir issue is concerned, or not doing enough as far as highlighting what is happening in India is concerned because of the decision that is to be taken by the FATF. How important is this decision?
You see, there are two aspects of militancy in Kashmir. Long ago, Pakistan had abandoned any of its role in sponsoring militancy in Indian part of Kashmir. But there are indigenous elements there. There are militant groups. Burhan Wani, he's known as a freedom fighter. He's not considered as a militant by the Kashmiris. And he's the one, on his funeral, there were hundreds of thousands of people on the roads. He is a sort of an icon over there. And if there are certain groups who are having a legitimate struggle, we should not discourage them, we should not block them. We should not play any role. They are independent, and let them have their independent policy on how to handle their.
But
their
why is
insurgency.
India pinpointing every time on Pakistan?
The reason is because of the situation in Afghanistan. There again, similar allegations were leveled against Pakistan by the US, by the Europeans, and by the Indians, by the Afghan government. So the perception against Pakistan has been unfortunately very strong. India has politically cashed in, diplomatically cashed in on that perception.
All right.
And because of which we are now caught up in the financial action task force. So I think I would say that now we should, it is very clear that Pakistan is not going to be put in the blacklist.
All right. But what about the sustenance, the continuation in the grey list? Do you feel it can be removed from the grey list?
I think it could, the maximum period has to be 2 years and 6 months. That is the maximum general standard period.
Right.
The one particular country can be placed in the grey list. Then they have to take a decision. When they have to take a decision, they don't have that majority with them to put Pakistan in the blacklist. Pakistan has largely, I would say, complied with their recommendations, but they are saying that they are just 5 points. Rest of the points have not been followed. Pakistan had its own limitations, but we have been such a tremendous pressure that now we are actually prosecuting Hafiz Saeed on these money laundering charges while there is not ample evidence to prosecute him. So we can't tell the court that, look, we are under pressure from the international community, so please convict Hafiz Saeed. The court will have to rule on the basis of the evidence that is going to be produced, and that evidence is somehow or the other is very insufficient. And very importantly, I would say that Hafiz Saeed's episode, that his role in the militancy, that is a gone and dead story.
All right.
And we should bury that story. But because of the pressure, we are basically prosecuting him. And similarly, there are, in Pakistani culture, you know, we have a huge network of the madrasa. They are source of education to the millions of poor children. They are providing them free of cost, the lodging and everything. Then if we start putting up pressures on them unnecessarily because we are under pressure from this financial action task force, I think that would be unfair.
All right. We've been joined by Shahbaz Rana, analyst, to talk of this decision to be taken on the FATF as well next month, whether Pakistan stays on the grey list, goes on the blacklist, or is removed from the grey list as well. Shahbaz Rana sahab, thank you very much to have joined us. Sir, has Pakistan been doing enough? I think the communication was lost with Shahbaz Rana, the analyst to whom we wanted to talk about the decision to be taken by the FATF next month as well. But we'll continue our discussion with you, Javed Rana sahab. Now, you talked about the measures that have been taken by the government. Now, on Tuesday, the Senate Standing Committee on Finance approves 2 important bills on money laundering and foreign exchange regulations. Also, earlier, the National Assembly had passed a very important FATF-related bill for the exchange of information and criminals with other countries as well. Still, you really feel we're not doing enough?
We have done sufficiently. But again, the bias is so strong. If somebody has to send money to someone in the Muslim countries, the people get conscious. If the name starts with Muhammad, If the name ends with Hussein, they think anybody whose name is look like a
All
Muslim,
right.
he
All
may
right.
be
I'm
terrorist.
going to cut you short. We've been joined by Shehbaz Rana online. Shehbaz Rana Sahab, thank you very much. Shehbaz Rana Sahab, are Pakistan, are our National Assembly, our politicians, our government doing the necessary steps? Are they taking the necessary steps to be removed from the grey list at the FATF? Shehbaz Rana Sahab, can you hear us? All right, there's some kind of a technical issue due to which Shehbaz Rana Sahab cannot hear us. But anyway, we'll continue our discussion with you, Javed Sahab. I'm sorry to have cut you short. You were saying about the government decisions that have been taken as far as its removal from the FATF. And I was asking you whether we had done enough in that respect, because you were a bit critical of Pakistan's steps being taken, or Pakistan being overcautious in that respect.
Overcautious, and I think partly because of the genuine reasons, and partly I think because of unnecessarily, I would say. Like we have genuine problem otherwise, by the way, because of political consideration, there has been money laundering issues. And now the international community is helping us to actually block all these problems, not because of out of love with Pakistan, but because they have concerns of the terror funding. So in Pakistan, I think it is quite difficult to pinpoint specifically about these problems lying with these terror funding. We have largely so far moved more on assumption, more by their recommendations. When we talk of their recommendations, that means that is largely Indian perspective. How do they see terror funding in Pakistan? How Americans see terror funding
But what
in
I
Pakistan?
don't understand is, Javed Rana Sahab, why can't they see things from Pakistan's perspective? Why do they have to rely always on an Indian perspective when it comes to so-called, let's put it, terror financing? Why? Why can't they rely properly on the evidence that is being shared by Pakistan?
I think they are expecting from Pakistan too much.
All right.
Which for the time being, we don't have that kind of institutional mechanism in place to comply all those recommendations. But to begin with, whatever we could have done, we have done, and those are the sufficient grounds to put us on the white list. Something they are probably not ready to do it. But again, at least one thing is very clear. The point I'm trying to make, that the Indian desire to put Pakistan on the blacklist,
That has always been there.
that would stay there, but that is not going to happen.
All right.
That is not going to happen. But again, I think we are putting in place the legislative mechanism that is very much there, and we are prosecuting people who India considers suspect, and against whom there is little evidence. And I think we need to make it to them realize that, look, you have to provide us evidence when you say there is a terror funding, because here you will see that in every next street people are funding to the madrasas, to the masjids, and that is not terror funding. It is actually help the madrasas and masjid
because that is a different system altogether.
to run their academic affairs. So, and now the government itself is modernizing all these madrasas, and there's nothing wrong with that
Exactly.
idea.
A uniform system of education is being put into place.
It is not going to happen overnight, and the Financial Task Action Force must keep that in mind and put Pakistan on the white list, considering the fact that the kind of the recommendation that they have come up with, it will take time. We don't have that kind of robust institutional mechanism, though I think sufficiently we have done our homework. But again, the input that Financial Action Task Force is getting, unfortunately, that is Indian. It is an Indian lobby, and to begin with, Pakistan was put on the grey list because Americans and Indians put pressure together, even on some of the
All right.
friends.
Let's talk about international pressure. Now, Saudi Arabia and UAE, it is being discussed widely that they are going to back Pakistan's stance. There are also news about Turkey, Malaysia, China as well that are going to back Pakistan's stance as far as all the measures that it has taken to curb so-called terror financing as per the measures that have been asked by the FATF. Do you feel that is going to have a significant pressure or decision-making effect on the FATF next month?
To the extent that those who were having a desire to put Pakistan on a blacklist, that is not going to happen. We have sufficient support on the basis of which at least the maximum what Financial Action Task Force can do, they can simply keep Pakistan on the grey list, which means up to June this year, maybe up to September this year.
All right.
But at the end of the day, they will have to take a decision. And generally, the tradition has been that the decision is taken by consensus. And I hope that sooner or later, Pakistan would be back on the white list.
All right, and it's very important for Pakistan to be on the white list as well, for it to be financially and economically stable. I mean, to move in the right direction as per the incentives that have been taken by the current government as well.
I think the disadvantage that are being associated with the being on the blacklist or being on the grey list, they are not as big or as problematic as the media is portraying them. That is going to have a negative shade on Pakistan. But that doesn't mean that Pakistan's financial system would come to a grinding halt. It is not going to happen. I think sooner or later we are going to leave that behind, but we have to see it in a bigger picture. The bigger picture is there is a strong negative perception which has been lobbied by the Indians in the Western capitals. That is a problematic, because of which we were put on the grey list, and we need to counter that perception.
All right.
Because when we say that we need to counter that perception, we need to tell India that RSS is the biggest terrorist.
Exactly, and why isn't the world, why isn't the FATF looking at that aspect?
And just imagine if Hafiz Saeed becomes the Prime Minister of Pakistan. What do you think of it?
Exactly.
And from Indian perspective, RSS terrorist Narendra Modi has become the Prime Minister, the man who was responsible for killing 2,000 people in Gujarat, and his entry was banned in the USA. When he became the Prime Minister, then everything was, all these restrictions were lifted.
Exactly.
And if we see, can you imagine that in the Uttar Pradesh Chief Minister, he is on the record in a public campaign, election campaign, that he said that the Muslim women who have died, we will rape them. They will be
Exactly. Exactly.
That kind of, I'm sorry to use the word of dirty mindset.
Dirty mindset, perception, ladies and gentlemen, that is something that the FATF also needs to look into as far as the Indian perception of Pakistan, the Indian perception of putting Pakistan on the grey list or the blacklist whatsoever is concerned. We have taken the necessary measures as per the recommendations of the FATF. Next month, there is going to be the review of the implementation of the FATF action plan that is going to be held in Paris, with the number of countries that are to back Pakistan's stance as well as the measures that Pakistan has taken. Let's see how that decision comes about, because it's very important for the future of Pakistan economically that we come out of that grey list. Thank you very much, Javed Rana Sahab, to have given us your point of view on two very important issues, that is what is happening in India and also this FATF decision that is going to be taken next month. Now, our final story is a very important story, the right of the child. We know what happened in Kasur. We know what happened to this poor girl called Zainab in 2018, where she was raped and then she was murdered. And now the National Assembly has approved the Zainab Response and Recovery Act 2019. This bill, 2 years after the uproar of the Kasur killings. It's a very important bill, ladies and gentlemen. The Human Rights Minister Shiri Mazari presented the bill in the National Assembly, and the National Assembly approved it. Zainab's rape and murder in the year 2018 sparked outrage and protest across the country when she was found dead in a trash bin in Kasur on the 9th of January, exactly more or less 2 years ago. Zainab's case was the 12th such incident to occur within a 10-kilometer radius in Kasur. Now, various decisions have been taken by the National Assembly as per this alert bill. Maximum sentence handed down to perpetrators of child sexual abuse will be life imprisonment and a fine of ₹1 million. The minimum sentence will be 10 years. This is also very important, and also the bill proposes taking action against police officials who have caused unnecessary delay in investigating such cases, as it has been in the past. Also, as per this act, an agency will be set up under the act to work with the helpline 1099. Ladies and gentlemen, do write down this number 1099 and other helplines which will be set up in the different districts. And the House has also adopted enforcement of the Women Property Rights Bill, the ICT rights of persons with disability bill as well. We are going in the right direction. We are going for the protections of the rights of people, whether it be children, whether it be women, whether it be people with disabilities. Let's hope this brings us the right dividends, that brings us in the right direction towards stability in the country, politically, economically, and otherwise. Allah Hafiz.